Friday came soon enough, and Lola would be the first to admit that she didn't sleep much the previous night. Oh, she just slept fine until Thursday morning, feeling that she had surged to thanks Lincoln for helping her figure out how to read the text of your average book. Come Thursday night, however, the butterflies in her stomach felt hotter than before. She wanted to believe that she didn't have much of a reason to be nervous around her brother. He approached her after all, but at the same time, Lola was aware with whatever they had discussed in Miss Lopez's office would be pretty deep and secretive. The 6-year-old twisted the hem of her shirt. She definitely needed a lot of answers regards to her treatment with her brother. Lola made a tired yawn before snuggling further into the seat on the first row. Dad was driving Lincoln in the front passenger seat. Lynn could feel the tension in the air as he took a second glance at his son, the fourth youngest daughter as well. So, his fingers tapped on the steering wheel. Are you kids ready for this? The children looked at their dad. I mean, if you aren't, we can go another time. Lincoln glanced at Lola from the edge of his vision. She appeared to be somewhat a little intimidated based on his movements. Lincoln himself was feeling a little uncertain about what he might uncover from their talk. At the same time, he couldn't help but wonder what occurred throughout his sister's life, what would turn her into Lola, a girl whose name has been sent fear into other beauty pageant contestants and peers alike, including herself. Looking at her now, it was almost as if she had been replaced with another Lola from another parallel universe. She might not look like she's ready, but if I have to, well, we need to do this. Between what I know with two of my other sisters, actually 3, there's not just so much to figure out. The boy mulled to himself. I still want to go, Lincoln replied, turning his head a little so he could focus more better on his sister. If she does. Lola lifted her head a little at being put on the spot. She looked between her brother and her father before responding with, I'm okay with going. She then looked at the window, not focusing on anything else important. Lynn didn't feel too convinced by her answer, but obliged without regardless. All right, gang, if you say so. The family soon arrived at the shared office building, with parking lot being not as less crowded than usual. Upon parking, the trio made their way into the building, operating on the memory to each of the suit that followed the few practitioners of the psychology department. While Lynn went to sign his children in, Lola and Lincoln sat in 2 empty chairs in the lobby. The two hadn't said anything to each other, not out of nervousness, because they didn't know where to begin. Lincoln had several questions he wanted to ask, but awaited for the right time to fire them. Lola, on the other hand, okay, this is it. Don't mess this up and answer what Lincoln wants. She then stole a quick glance at him. And for Pete's sake, don't make him flip out. Then you'll never hear the end of it from your sisters, and you might go crazy from the insults. The 6-year-old silently hoped Lincoln didn't let his anger boil over, not because she was afraid of being yelled at by him, but because she feared she might screw up and attack him, just like a certain older sister did. Lincoln? Lola? A feminine voice called out of the entryway towards the offices. Both kids looked to see Dr. Lopez smiling at the two of them. Are you guys ready? The 2 kids nodded as they got out of their seats. Well, the meeting for the hour, I suppose, Lynn chuckled. Hope you kids don't mind, but Van Zillen needs some gas. You 2 are going to be okay? I guess so, Lincoln replied, an infection of uncertainty in his tone. Well, depending on what we discuss, I'm pretty sure things will turn out fine. Miranda offered some hopefulness into their situation. She held the door open for the kids as they walked past her, shutting the hallway door behind her moments later. Lynn gave a sigh as he walked out of the lobby. Hope they could work something out. Lola sure changed from being the sweet little girl than she was when she had diapers. Miss Lopez led the children to her office, shutting the door behind her as the Louds took their seats. Unlike previously with Lincoln and Lynn Jr., both kids sat on the same sofa, a blit on the edge seats. This didn't go unnoticed as the good doctor, as she mentally catalogued it. He has gone around more hesitant around his sisters. She glanced at Lola only for a second before focusing her desk to find her notebook. A big achievement considering he had great concerns about Lola. The doctor finally found her book before taking a seat to her own chair across the two. So what brings you both here today? Well, Lincoln started, fighting off a bit of nervousness. I wanted to talk about where me and Lola are in our relationship, and had some questions as to why I wouldn't fight at home. Lola made a slight shrug, pretty much what he said. Miranda tapped her index fingers together. Okay, and speaking of which, how things have been at home? I imagine it hasn't been easy given what I already know. Both kids looked at one another, unsure of who should go first. Lola seemed content about letting her brother talk, but he gave a hesitant look of spoke with what his intention to let her speak. Breathing in. It's been weird at home. I mean, we've been without Lincoln for over a month, and Lola took a pause to think things over. I was surprised when to hear he wanted to come back at a random part of the week. I was happy but also nervous. I was also surprised to hear that, Miranda stated, which also makes me ask, what kind of sort of interactions have you had with each other since then? Lola can only frown at the question. I hardly see Lincoln at all. He doesn't want to ride in the van with us, to which I get it. But it's even when he's home, we don't see him until dinner. She folded her arms. I think the only time we've talked to each other was just 2 days ago, but I don't blame him. Lincoln sat there surprised at Lola's words. He couldn't really have been shocked, having been well aware of his sisters, already knew his fear coming towards them. Maybe it was the fact that Lola showed a little level of understanding and maturity that she hadn't noticed before, or that was one without an underlying motive. Miranda then pursed her lips. It seems like everyone's on edge due to new arrangements. Then again, it only has been a week. Chances are everyone will become more accustomed to each other without needing to walk on eggshells. She then looked at Lincoln. And speaking of which, well, how's your routine been like, Lincoln? Well, Lincoln rubbed the back of his head. I get up early in the morning before everyone else wakes up, which also has the benefit of avoiding the line for the bathroom. He sat in his hand on the couch. But the main downfall is that I'm really tired in the morning. I wish I didn't have to wake up 5 like my parents do. But I'm just not comfortable being around everyone or riding in the van. That's why I use my bike. And have you been doing this every day since returning home? The doctor asked. Lincoln gave a curt nod. Miranda tapped her pen against her chin. Given the circumstances, I would say the optimal course action until you feel comfortable being around your siblings. But at the same time, I advise relying on your current routine as a long-term strategy, Ms. Lopez replied. Most adults wake up that early as they have a job that would require them to do so. But for you, Lincoln, you're still a growing boy. It would be beneficial to get as much sleep as you can. Lincoln averted his gaze as he pondered the advice. In the meantime, Miranda focused her attention on Lola. So Lola, what are your thoughts on what you have to say about your brother being at home? The first thing on my mind was trying to not make him scared of me or my sisters. Although I guess they'd fix themselves since I hardly see them outside of dinner. Have you guys ever talked to at school? Lola shook her head. I don't see any of my sisters that much in school, separate classes and all, Lincoln added. Didn't you stop from finding Lynn? The 6-year-old muttered. The middle child detected a hint of envy in her sister's voice. Before he could answer, the good doctor spoke. Okay. So to be clear, there has been little to no interaction between the two of you until today? Well, Lincoln helped me do some homework on Wednesday, Lola answered. Lincoln nodded. I wanted to ask to see if she would come here today, and well, seeing her struggling, I couldn't help but try to help her out. Miranda slapped her forehead. All right. Slipped in my mind, she chuckled. And although, do you feel the same minute of those moments helping you overcome your fears? The snow-haired child twiddled his thumbs in hesitation, visible for all to see. Not exactly. I guess you could say I learned to trust Lynn a little more than I did, but I couldn't let her in my room or anything like that. He pondered a little at the moment. I guess I did trust Lenny alongside from Lily, But that's just hard not being mad at her for anything. Well, besides one time. His brows furrowed a little. I doubt I'll ever speak to Lori anytime soon, though. Are you least trusting her now, or is it seem somewhere in the middle? Look, I get that she had a rough time at school. Lincoln folded his arms. Which it doesn't make me feel sorry for you still. She still needed to act like because we were even her siblings. Miranda nodded in understanding. What about the other sisters you haven't mentioned? How do you feel towards them? Lincoln glanced at Lola, who was looking at the expectation of him for him to answer. He wasn't wanting to lie and say that he trusted her, only to go back on his words soon after. What mostly likely would upset her then again, the truth of the matter was that anything he said would likely end up as the same result. And if she did lash out, well, that's why he wanted to have this talk with the therapist. For some of them, I guess, it's more of not really trusting them than being afraid. At least that's from what I could say about Luna and Lincoln stated. For the others, the boy hesitated before giving an answer. I'm still afraid of them for different reasons. Different reasons? Miranda repeated. I just had to find it hard to be around them due to past moments I've ever had with them weren't so good. Lola pushed her lips as she soaked the little out of her guilt. Luann's pranking is so over the top, and so she does it without warning. It's so hard not to trust her with anything. And it's like she can't go a full minute without making a joke. Even when her punchline is lame. Lincoln rested his hand on his hand. Actually, there was this one time where any of us tried to see who would go the longest without annoying any habits. And Luann looked like her head might explode for not being able to tell a single joke. Lola squinted her eye, but at least she hasn't made a joke ever since we were grounded. Well, technically she can now since Dad removed some of our punishments. But Luann basically had given up comedy, so it's likely she'll pull a prank. Lincoln gave a quizzical look. That still doesn't explain why she goes apeshit on April Fool's Day. His frown then turned into a glare as if he looked away. I had to get tested for rabies after that raccoon attack. She said it's because... Lola stopped. Upon realizing what she was about to spill a secret, actually, it's better if she tells you. Lincoln didn't respond, although he did note that bit of information. With Lucy and Lisa, they're creepy in their own ways. I'll agree it's odd for someone like Lucy's age to hold such a negative emotions like she does, and Lisa is rather special case, Miranda stated. Lincoln deadpanned. Is it because she thinks that it's the next Einstein, or does she think her own family are just guinea pigs for her to use? Miranda bit her cheek. It's not exactly my place to stay, but she's only 4, so let's say her morals and ethics have yet to fully mature. Still, she could launch an experiment at any moment, and none of us would even know about it until after we mutate into some monster. Lincoln replied with a mix of anger and fear. I mean, one day she could blow up the whole house, and not just the roof. Or worse. At least Lucy just scares anyone by popping out of nowhere. The boy shuddered slightly. And needs a body for a funeral practice all the time? I think she might have been buried alive at the beach once. But what about... Lola started, but Lincoln hadn't finished yet. Lana wasn't too bad, but sometimes I can help but think some kinds of animals she keeps bringing into the house. Dangerous ones, too. The white-haired child stated, and for some reason, she also keeps asking me about helping me to help handle them. Sometimes I don't mind, but at the same time, I don't want to get poisoned by a snake or whatever reptile she finds. Lola pierced her lips. But what about me, Lincoln? She shouted, making the boy flinch. After slightly swearing to herself for the outburst, what about me? What do you think about when it comes to me? Lincoln stared at Lola in the eyes. She was searching for his own, begging him to give some sort of answer. Lola, he began, shifting his body to face her. I don't like saying this, but sometimes you sort of act like a meaner version of Lori. Lola went eye-wide as she felt her heart quiver at those words resonated in her. When she came back to focus as she repeated, well, sort of. Well, sometimes you can actually act pretty bossy and mean to get to others to do what you want, or resort to blackmail. Lincoln rubbed his arm nervously. But I still remember the times you were in diapers. He then sat on his lap. And you were the sweetest baby sister, you and Lana. You were actually a little less fussy than Lily. You probably put Lenny to shame by being so cooperative and never really got mad about anything unless you were hungry or just wanted someone to play with you. I mean, even the only thing that hadn't changed much were your fits with Lana. The boy made a depressed frown. Then, when you started getting into those beauty pageants, it's like a whole different you came out of nowhere. Lola sucked her lips as guilt-ridden stare was visible for her eyes. So, Lincoln continued, I wanted us to clean about it there since I don't know what it felt good to ask at home. But what I want to know is, he looked at Lola in the eyes, seeing the color of her eyes and a little as she prepared for the worst. What happened to you? What happened to the sister I watched over when she was in diapers? Lincoln averted his gaze as he felt his heart quivering under her gaze. No offense, but I didn't think you'd start acting like Lori until maybe you were Lynn's age. That statement tore Lola into more than it would have. She herself wasn't quite hostile towards Lori since being dared to intimidate their brother, despite not being showed the original state of mind. Heck, she even knew better than to scare Lincoln like that, especially since its own precise would send chills down his spine. It was definitely something she knew Lori did almost to everyone when she got into her social circle. And to make it worse, Lola had to come into terms with extent influence to cause yet those around her before this never-ending nightmare started. During the times before the SFP was used first, she kind of knew the look Lincoln gave her could be anything she spoke directly, could have greeted her with annoyance or some agitation. If he was the middle of a task, she would say the fear of it that annoyed her like the front, and to the horror of the present day itself, it was the pride of look and knowledge, looking like she could get him to blend well with her, whatever she pleaded. Blackmail and physical attacks were more the last resorts. But as she felt a lady like herself, she shouldn't have been a resort to dirty tricks. But at the same time, she would find herself pulling that card once more and frequently. Her stomach felt queasy as sinking back to look at the hold, thinking about the way she treated her brother in the past, not paying any attention to how much she could have damaged to the bound or they had, using him to her advantage no matter if it convinced him. She hated it, and she hated how she must have made Lincoln feel by his sudden shift in attitude when they were younger. Was Lincoln even at that pageant? The 6-year-old thought to herself, but if he asked, then he doesn't know. Well, I was almost 5, so Lincoln could have been 8, maybe 9? She shook her head. That makes no sense. Boys don't go to that stuff. Her eyes squinted a little. But then, why did he offer to help me? I mean, not counting on the times I forced him, but I really did end up copying Lori? I need to ask Mom or Dad. Her mind refocused on that question Lincoln asked, especially when he caught him and Dr. Lopez staring. She didn't know how long she got lost in her thoughts, but it had to have been a few minutes at best. Lola sat up straight. I don't know if you were there, but the girl you knew me as... She bit her cheek for a second. I mean, I want to believe I'm still sweet and nice, but I started to change after having that one pageant that was ended very badly.